Welcome to the Friday edition of Wyatt's World, and my topic today in general is going to be grammar and what is sometimes called the grammar police. I'm sometimes referred to as the grammar police. And this is pertinent to the day when I'm actually recording this, which is Thursday, March 4th, because that's been designated as World Grammar Day. And there are a lot of people, and I'm not included among them, who get very pedantic about grammar and who insist that you always use certain ways of speaking, like never split an infinitive, never use a double negative when you mean a single negative, and so forth. Well, a lot of those rules were concocted in the 19th century, and they don't really clarify much of anything. For example, the position of only is, strictly speaking, dictated by a rule of grammar that says that the word only must come either directly before or directly after the word it modifies and cannot be somewhere else in the sentence. So saying something like, I only eat eggs for breakfast is incorrect, because only there is next to eat, and so strictly speaking that sentence means I only eat eggs. That is, I don't throw them against the wall or pack them into the refrigerator. Or the only thing I do is eat them. So you should say, I eat only eggs for breakfast, or I eat eggs only for breakfast. I mean, there's a lot of ways in which that sentence changes depending on where you place only. But if you say, I only eat eggs for breakfast, I understand what you mean. The grammatical rule is, in that sense, for me, strictly pedantry and is not useful, just as the split infinitive is not a useful rule of grammar. When in Star Trek they say we're going to boldly go rather than to go boldly, it doesn't matter. It's not important. It's not a grammatical rule that I'm going to go to war about. But there are some that I will. And that's the topic of this video today, is what matters to me in terms of grammar and what doesn't. All right, so the first rule that I would adhere to is something that both George Orwell wrote about, and also you can find in Fowler's Dictionary of English Usage, which is basically that if you are understood, if your language is not ambiguous, then correct grammar is irrelevant, doesn't matter, not important, as long as you're understood, because the purpose of language is to be understood. All right, so if I say to boldly go or to go boldly, it makes no difference. And even if I use a double negative and you understand, it makes no difference. If I use ain't incorrectly, now ain't does have a correct usage. It's the contraction of the full phrase, am I not? You know, I'm going to Norwich tomorrow, ain't I? Am I not? We have tended to replace it with aren't I, which actually is ungrammatical, but it seems to work. So if you say, I can't get no satisfaction, I understand. I don't need Mick Jagger to say, I cannot get any satisfaction. That's the more grammatically correct. But there's something forceful and real about I can't get no satisfaction. It all works. But we have to make two important distinctions. One of them is when we are being technical, and the other is when we are either deliberately or not deliberately being obscure. Let's take technical first. So let's say I sign a contract to rent an apartment, and the apartment contract contains in it the statement, the rent is due bi-monthly. Now what does that mean? You have to define bi-monthly. Does it mean every 2 months or twice a month? And it could mean either. The dictionary will allow both usages. In a contract like that, bi-monthly is ambiguous, and a good lawyer would add a parenthesis, or would not use bi-monthly at all, would simply say the rent is due twice a month, or the rent is due on the 1st and 15th of the month, or something like that to make it clear. So there are technical usages that are not always clear when we're just speaking informally. Let's take the definition of a fruit. When I was a primary school student, I remember somehow or other it came up in my class, and somebody said to the teacher, you know, a tomato is a fruit. And the teacher said, well, when I go to the greengrocer and I ask for a bag of mixed fruit, I don't expect to get a tomato in the bag. Well, he's got a couple of points there, one of them correct and one of them not correct. Actually, if you get a fruit salad in certain parts of Asia, it's perfectly reasonable to expect tomatoes to be in there with the mangoes and other things. So, I mean, he's not right on that score. But generally speaking, we use the term fruit in popular parlance to mean a sweet thing that can serve as a dessert. So apples and pears and bananas and mangoes and papayas and whatnot. But not tomatoes, because we don't in the West use tomatoes as a dessert. But that's informal. The biological definition of a fruit concerns how that edible product is produced, and a fruit is produced by the plant flowering, and for the male and female components of the flower to interact with one another and to fertilize and create a small fertilized component which grows into a fruit. And that's how apples are made and pears are made and tomatoes. But so are eggplants and zucchini and a lot of other things which we don't call fruit, because in popular terms fruit is like sweet dessert and vegetable is main course. And so tomato gets put into the main course category, maybe a salad category if you like. And we don't in popular terms call the tomato a fruit. But sometimes it makes a difference. And there was a court case in the United States many years ago as to whether a tomato was a fruit or a vegetable, because fruits and vegetables were taxed differently when they were imported. And it was therefore important to people importing tomatoes to decide whether they are fruit or vegetables technically, legally, because it influenced the cost of them being imported. Those kinds of technical decisions are really crucial under certain conditions, but they are legal conditions. So early this morning I was having my weekly conversation with my friends in England, as I do every Thursday morning early. It's Wednesday evening for them. They're all sitting around drinking beer and talking about nothing in particular. And I don't know why I got on my hobby horse about this, but I started getting fussy about grammar. And one of the things that I mentioned was that none or no one is singular. And we started talking about this, and various people on the Zoom chat were saying, well, it doesn't feel right, like none of the people were wearing ties, or none of the buses were full. That they wanted to use a plural noun with none, but I want to use a singular noun. I want to say none of the buses was full, none of the people was wearing a tie, because none is less than one, and plural is more than one. But I can certainly be accused of pedantry there. I mean, in the end, it really doesn't matter. If you say none of the buses was full or none of the buses were full, the meaning is exactly the same, and it really doesn't matter. But we dropped that, and then very near the end of our meeting, one of the members said, on our 1-year anniversary. And I said, grammar police again. Anniversary comes from two Latin roots, essentially annus and versus, and it means year and turn, or like revolution. So an anniversary is the turn of a year. So you can't have anything other than an annual anniversary. But they use the term 1-year anniversary because people want to talk about a 1-month anniversary or a 1-week anniversary. And that's just horrible. That you don't say 1-year anniversary. You say first anniversary, second anniversary. The same way with birthday. You don't say my 1-year birthday, or in my case, my 70-year birthday is coming up at the end of this month. I just say 70th because a birthday is the day I was born, and it's month and day. I can't have a 1-month birthday, or a 1-week birthday, or whatever, or half a year birthday. The birthday is annual, and more importantly, anniversaries are annual. What that points up is that we don't have a good term to mark the passage of 1 month or 1 week from a critical date. Like when you say, okay, I met my girlfriend on the 17th of June, so the 17th of July is my first month-iversary or something like that. Mensiversary would be a good one. That would be like technically correct. But that's a case where I guess I don't really particularly care. But I care enough that people don't look deeply into what words actually mean. And that is a critical area for me, because it means that people have a tendency not to think about what they're saying. And that does trouble me. I remember a number of years ago, Michael Caine was on with Michael Parkinson, and he was talking about the origin of the word marmalade. And he recited an old folk tale that Mary Queen of Scots often got headaches, and when she got headaches, they were cured by a concoction made, a preserve made out of bitter oranges. And so when she got sick, people around her, her servants and so forth, would say in French, this presumably happened in France because she spent a lot of her time in France, they would say that they had to make this concoction because Marie est malade. You know, Marie is sick in French. Marie est malade. And that Marie est malade became marmalade. Well, it's just not true. And it's very easy to prove it's not true. That marmalade comes from several different Romance language words. Sort of marmalado and so forth, that mean preserved fruits. And the use of that word predates the birth of Mary Queen of Scots. So, I mean, even though it's a nice tale, I suppose, it's just not true. And it's easy to check. All you have to do is go to an etymological dictionary, look up marmalade, see when it was first used, find out it was used well before Mary Queen of Scots was even born, and therefore the story just can't be true. But people don't check. They don't do their homework, and that is something that bothers me. Not because of marmalade or whatever, but because of other things that do matter. Like, who won the last presidential election in the United States? If you don't check, if somebody just says, oh, well, Donald Trump won it, but it was stolen from him, and you just say, oh, okay, and you believe that, and then you go off and you storm the Capitol building to try to right the wrong, then it's not good. But if you actually do your checking, if you look into all the circumstances, the various laws in the swing states like Arizona and Georgia and Pennsylvania, if you look at the court cases and so on, then it's not possible to come to the conclusion that the election was stolen. But if you just take somebody's word for it, then you may end up storming the Capitol and getting arrested and so forth. That's where my concern is. And like one of the examples that I often give is the use of the word of in sentences such as, I should have worn a suit to the party. Now, why is of in there? It makes no sense. That what people are hearing is the sound, as in I should have, which is a contraction of I should have worn a suit, but they hear I should have, I should of, and so they replace the apostrophe VE with of when they write it out. And that means that they're not thinking about how language is made. They're not thinking about what of means. And what have means, have and of, do not mean the same thing. So the phrase I should of makes no sense. And you would know that if you paid attention to the way language is constructed. So my ultimate point is that paying attention is important. It's not irrelevant. It's not just some sort of elitist thing like, okay, you spell these words this way, which is wrong. You spell there and there, meaning there in that place, and there, meaning belonging to them. You spell them the same. And I'm going to be elitist and say, you're wrong. Well, in that case, or to and to and to, going to school, and I went to also, or I have two friends. Like, spelling them differently does actually help, but it's not terribly important. If they all were spelled the same way, it wouldn't matter. In that sense, I agree that being too pedantic, being too ardent a member of the grammar police is being unnecessarily elitist. But there are many occasions where not paying attention to the way that grammar works shows that you generally do not pay enough attention to the way things work in general. And that's not good. That's what leads to insurrections at the Capitol. That being more critically minded is really important. Sometimes. Not always, but sometimes. All right, that's my 2 or 5 cents, or however many cents I'm giving today. And I hope that you will think about what I'm saying here, and in turn you will tell your friends. You'll like and subscribe. And I'm pretty sure I'm going to cook on Tuesday, but I'm certainly not aware at this point of what it will be. Probably sausages, because I've got a lot of them, but I don't know. So have a good weekend.